So you have people out there who they tell you that that they're opposed to Donald Trump for any number of reasons. One of my favorite writers, and I've actually had a chance to chat with him in the past, Daniel Pipes, runs an organization called Middle East Forum. Very conservative guy, Jewish by the way, strong supporter of the state of Israel. He has been disappointed in Trump, thinking that Trump in the past has been willing to give a little bit of latitude to the Palestinian state and more control to the Middle East to Arabs and the like. Yet Trump last night spoke about his commitment to the nation of Israel. And then if you're criticizing Trump, saying, well, he's cozying up to the Arabs, you can't have it two ways, because other people are saying, well, most Arabs are Muslims, and Trump, he must hate Muslims because he wants a moratorium on refugee resettlement in this country. Not a ban, a moratorium. That big word means let's take our time and figure this out before we allow any terrorists into the country. So people, they make all of these claims, and they inflate what the man's beliefs are for their own purposes, because they think, well, unlike Hillary Clinton, we won't get a free lunch. That's ultimately what this is all about, my friends. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And I don't have a problem with fellow conservatives who are still struggling with this. These people have been far better, I think, for this country than the liberals have. And let them work out their issues with Trump. I'm patient. Most of them say they will not be voting for Hillary Clinton, and that's a good thing. On the other hand, Trump also addressed issues related to, because people say, well, Trump must not like this group, he must not like that group. He pointed out that if you're a black American or a Latino American, you've got people coming here taking your jobs away from you. And I know that Vicente Fox thinks that if you're a Latino or a Mexican immigrant or descendant of someone from Mexico living in this country, your loyalties are to Mexico and not the USA. Someone ought to kick that guy right square in the pants or elsewhere. But the fact of the matter is, if you were born here and you're an American and you've done, you're out there looking for a job, somebody else may be coming here to take it from you. You shouldn't be concerned about where they're from. You should be concerned about your job. So what's wrong with that? And people are. I mean, and then they say, well, the LGBTQ or whatever they call themselves, they can't possibly like Trump. Except last night he gave a very libertarian answer to that question or that argument. In fact, he may have taken some of the thunder away from Gary Johnson on the libertarian side of the spectrum. So what's the problem with a lot of the critics out there? I don't get it. 10 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 75. We have a caller with us. You're up next on KLIX.
Morning, Bill. All I could think about watching the convention the last couple of days is, could you imagine what it would have been like if someone like Jeb Bush had won the nomination?
Oh, my gosh.
What a snooze fest. They would have been going completely out of their way not to even mention Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. Nobody's feelings could be hurt. And it was energizing, exciting, and made you proud to be an American. There might be hope for this country is how I felt after watching all of it. And have a good day, Bill.
Thank you. And, of course, we would have had it been subjected to Barbara Bush leading her little boy up to the stage. All 6 feet 4 inches of Jeb Bush. I'm sorry, but the folks who were out there who could have possibly ended up with this nomination. I knew George Pataki on a personal basis when I was working in radio and television in New York State. When George was the governor there, he campaigned initially as a conservative, won the office, and then became anything but. But he was a nice guy. Again, I just can't imagine if we'd put him up there, though, as the nominee last night. Snooze fest. Scott Walker. I realize Scott Walker took on the big labor unions in his state, the public sector unions that were bankrupting his state, and he won. And that's mightily impressive. But again, Scott Walker, snooze fest. And even Bobby Jindal, who I dearly love, and maybe the most brilliant man in America. And, he's got a track record that is just incredible with his ability to deal with problems. Would be a great man for the job. Jindal, though, is like listening to my 9th grade physics teacher. And there was a reason I was usually asleep in second period. 9:12. Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Peggy Noonan, writing at the Wall Street Journal today, says this about Trump. His acceptance speech was an opportunity to break through in a new way and flesh out his purpose. She writes, I think he succeeded, though with a certain grimness. He'd probably reply that the times are grim. And I would think that most Americans feel the same way about that. And she goes on to say it was powerful. After reading a copy of the speech leaked in advance by a mischief maker, an anti-Trump conservative intellectual emailed me, he's going to win. The moment at last was not unknowable to him. So people out there who've been saying, well, there's no chance Hillary Clinton's going to walk away with this. He's alienated so many people out there. I'll tell you what, you break through to people's needs and their wants, which is what he's doing now, and you make it clear that, if you can stop thinking about, well, he hurt my feelings when he said this, or he hurt my feelings when he said that, or gee, he didn't say it, as they say in media when they give somebody a grief for not being politically correct. He didn't say it in an elegant way. Sorry. What is this elegance of which we speak? One of the most successful politicians in American history. A friend of mine actually worked on some of his campaigns, was a former police chief and then mayor of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania by the name of Frank Rizzo, who was a Democrat, we should point out. But Frank Rizzo didn't put up with any guff. He just spoke what it was like bang, 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 bang. Now, I'm not talking about a gun, but when he spoke, it was just pretty much whatever came off the top of his head. And people loved it. And the guy could do no wrong with the voters. And many Republicans I know supported him. I used to live in that neck of the woods, and I'll tell you, people responded to that. And ultimately, it comes down to, put aside all of your I know the Democrats have divided us all up neatly and nicely and put us in different categories so that we can war with each other and they can exploit that. But if you go back and you think about it, stand back from all of this and realize what they've done. Sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but, names will never hurt me. And all of that, but words have consequences. Baloney, baloney. When I was growing up as a kid, you wouldn't believe the names that were bandied about the neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood that was primarily, it was early America in the sense that you had a lot of people there of Irish ancestry, of English ancestry, of Scottish ancestry, of Scot-Irish ancestry. But then you threw in the mix, the world changes, and you threw in the mix of all the kids who lived in the neighborhood from Polish ancestry, French-Canadian folks who had resettled and moved down from Canada. You had Italian Americans, as they were called at the time. Again, all of these hyphenated groups. But growing up as kids, heck, we didn't even know about that. But we did know certain nicknames for certain people's ethnic background. And guys got called that stuff all the time, but you were proud of it. Nobody went home and said, he called me a dumb Mick, and you didn't go home crying about it. It just never entered your mind. 9:15, Bill Colley, top story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Some of the liberals screaming today because a fellow by the name of Pete Hegseth, I'll get that out. He's a he's a villain in their eyes because I guess he served in the U.S. military in a couple of American wars. He was being mean to people around the world who are victims of our post-colonial nature. Yeah, right. But whatever you want to say. Pete Hegseth is an American hero now working at Fox News. Do you know the other day when that guy burned himself trying to set the American flag on fire? First of all, one of the things my parents told me was don't play with matches. There was a reason they told me that. Because it could be dangerous. Burn down the house or burn yourself up. Not a good thing, okay? I think we could all understand that. Most of us are reasonable enough to know what they were warning about. Pete Hegseth is talking about this guy because he arrived with his camera crew just as this was going on, and he was speaking with a Daily Caller about it. And listen to his reaction about this guy almost turning himself into a human torch.
I walked around with a microphone and wore an American flag hat and just said, why do you hate America? And do you want to burn this flag? Why do you want to burn this flag? And most of them had no good answers, no surprise. I mean, they think they know what they hate, but they don't realize how charmed they are to live in a country where they can do just that.
Right.
And so our job, we aired it on Fox and Friends this morning 4 times to just show them how uninformed they are, make them look foolish, because that's what they do look like. And there's no reason to elevate what they're talking about because it's insane. But let's expose them for who they really are, and then expose the cops for what a great job they do. And that's exactly what happened this morning.
Yeah, I think that's burning the American flag is never the answer or the way to voice your political opinion. And I'm not gonna lie, I found it a little funny that the guy caught himself on fire.
Yeah, I almost thought, let him go. But that's not, our cops protect everybody, even those who harm themselves or seek to harm them.
I was telling a joke one time about liberals on air at a radio station I worked at many, many years ago, and I made reference to getting rid of them in a funny way. And conservatives obviously would have chuckled about it, and any reasonable person would realize I didn't intend anybody any harm. But I get a call from some angry liberal saying, "That's eliminationist rhetoric. You should be fired." I thought, what is eliminationist rhetoric? Huh? I'd never heard that before. And so he was angry that I would take pleasure in telling this joke. And here you go, you got Pete Hegseth and the woman from the Daily Caller and talking about this guy torching himself. Accidentally, of course, and liberals are now angry because that's not funny. I mean, burns are a serious business and very painful, and you shouldn't be taking pleasure in liberals burning themselves. Well, again, don't play with matches. And if you're not burning the American flag out in the middle of the street, then you likely wouldn't set yourself afire. I mean, is that, what part of that is a little difficult for liberals to understand in all of this? None of this, people wouldn't even laugh about it or find some humor in it, in somebody's pain, if the ding-a-ling hadn't gone out there and apparently had no idea how you start a fire in the first place. Obviously, no Boy Scout training in his life. And he torches himself. Well, you do things that are wrong in most people's eyes, they're not going to be terribly sympathetic to you. Some years ago, there was a hockey coach in Canada. He coached amateur hockey, young kids. I mean, I'm talking kids who were 10 or 12 years old. And back in the early 1990s, he was arrested and convicted and then sent to prison because turns out over the years, he'd molested hundreds of the little boys who played on his team. That conviction sent him off to prison, and they send him off quietly, though, because child molesters usually have a short shelf life when they get to jail. And on a broadcast of what's called Hockey Night in Canada, the color commentator and former coach Don Cherry mentioned this guy by name and mentioned what prison he was in. And he got angry, and he wrote the CBC a letter from prison, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, demanding Don Cherry's firing and saying, "Don Cherry just signed my death warrant." Don Cherry's response was, "Hey, tough. Don't molest little boys." And the funny thing is, the public agreed with that. If you didn't do bad things, you would not put yourself in a position where someone is going to come in with a crowbar one day when you're in the prison shower and take you out for good. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. On News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 75. We've got more on the way. I've got a bit more on the convention and a couple of things, too, to tell you about some local reaction to refugee resettlement from some of our state legislators. That's on the way in just a few minutes on Top Story. There is a story in this morning's Times News. Maybe it was yesterday's. I just happened to see it on the website this morning and assumed it was from today. It's about reaction from some local state legislators to refugee resettlement. I want to mention that in just a moment, if we can do that without setting too many prairie fires. But in the meantime, I also want to tell you about my friend Dr. Eric F. Jones. And Dr. Jones uses a holistic systemic approach to wellness, and he's been in practice since 1993. He's got 2 locations here in Twin Falls, actually both of them quite close to our radio studios. And he has master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy. Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing such as naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and napathy to help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. And he's currently accepting new patients as well. He has evening and Saturday appointments available. The number, 731-7178. And Dr. Jones is also on Facebook. The group name, if you go to Facebook, is Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., Mental Health and Wellness Therapist, and that's Eric with a C. And he'll have a lot of detailed information there, too, for you if you're looking. You've got some concerns about how, maybe you can use some more historic methods of treatment versus just a lot of the more modern methods, take a look at that Facebook page. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. It's 9:25 on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's going to warm up to about 90 today, not quite as warm as it was yesterday. Donald Trump mentioned this last night during his remarks about Muslim immigration to this country, and he's talking mainly about refugee resettlement. We have to know who these people are. Look, already James Comey and James Clapper, so we've got the FBI and the Defense Intelligence as well. They're all worried about the fact that we don't know who a lot of these people are who are coming to this country. Story in the Times News details a split among Republican state legislators on this issue, especially over what happened at Fawn Brook Apartments on June 2nd this year. Most of you are familiar with that story on the local level. It certainly has gotten a lot of attention, and it deals with the sexual assault of a 5-year-old girl by some little boys who were members, well, little to teenagers, but all underage, who were members of refugee families who'd come here as refugees. And it has set certain parts of this community just ablaze because people are upset about, what's going on, what kind of people are we bringing here and the like. Now, sexual assaults by minors do take place among white populations, Christian populations, Latino populations, brown and black populations, red populations, and the like. Probably they don't get as much attention because they're not related to some of the concerns about this resettlement program. I know that a lot of our legislators are going to be getting criticized about this, but you know what? I think you've got to stand back for a moment and let the emotions settle down. Because the legislators who are being quoted on this, they are concerned. I think Stephen Hartkin and Lance Clow were quoted in the newspaper story as saying, that they've got no beef with people coming here as refugees. However, they also agree with Donald Trump and with Governor Otter. We need a better vetting process. I know there are people in this community who are going to be stark raving angry with them because they're not herding these people up like they're cattle and driving them out of town. What more would you have them do? That's my question. What more? What do you expect them to do? They already have agreed that they need more vetting of people coming into this country. So tell me, if you think they're not doing enough, what is it they need to do? It's 75 right now, and you're on KLIX with Bill Colley. You're on the air.
Yeah, Bill, I was one of those that had one foot in the Never Trump camp for quite a while. And
sure.
I believe last night I took my foot out of that. I heard some things last night. His scorched earth policy that he had getting to the nomination, calling Cruz a liar and all the other things he did, really kind of soured me against him. But I heard some things last night that made me think, this guy wants to take us where I am wanting to go. And I don't know if he's going to be able to get us there, but I've got somebody in front of me that looks like he really wants to do it.
And I think I was unhappy with a lot of that.
I'm willing to maybe reach over and go halfway and give him a shot, because if he can accomplish some of the things he was talking about that have been a big concern for me, I think I'm willing to get in the Trump camp.
And I'll say something. His approach to politics was certainly unique, and it wasn't very nice at times. His opponents in the primaries can certainly tell you that. And it has hurt him. I think he's woken up to that fact, number one. But, back in the 1840s and 1850s, people would call opponents scalawags and horse thieves. So it's not necessarily new. It's just Trump resurrected that sort of politics, which we hadn't seen in a very long time.
That's right.
Well, thank you much for the call. Your reaction is very much like that of the Frank Luntz focus group last night, where a great many of the Never Trumpers who were in the audience said, I think I'm going to be voting for the man. And again, I pointed out, you've got liberal writers saying Trump is now turning a lot of those old blue-collar workers in the Rust Belt over, and they are probably going to be in his camp as well. I talk to my sister every now and then who still lives in western New York State, where the big city is a Rust Belt place called Buffalo. And you don't have to drive down far the New York Thruway to see many other cities that are exactly alike. Trump has those people on board. And he's going to have voters likely in Ohio and Pennsylvania and possibly even Michigan, as Michael Moore said the other day. If he gets those, Hillary Clinton is just going to be a historical note somewhere down the road. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. More on Trump coming up in a few minutes, as well as more of your telephone calls. It's 74.